Push-pull legs is keeping your arms small. What's up, everyone? I'm John Jewett with J3U University. We elevate physique education. Today, we're talking about push-pull legs and how if you have weak arms, this might not be the best split design for you and what you might want to do instead. Now, with push-pull legs, the idea is that we're training chest, shoulders, triceps at the end of push. With your pull session, you hit back, and then there's some biceps at the end. Then you have your full leg day. You do get some stimulus, of course, for arms, and typically this might be at the end of a push or a pull session, maybe 6 sets, maybe 8 sets of direct work. And so total across, and how these sessions rotate, depending on how many rest days you have, you typically might be training everything every 5 days. A typical split is push, pull, off, legs, off. Maybe it's higher frequency than that. But as we could say on average for a whole, maybe you get 10 to 12 sets directly for bicep and tricep work. Now, of course, there is going to be some additional volume in place with just doing compound pressing work and pull downs and rows, but these likely aren't optimal movements. And of course, they do count towards your total volume. However, as a entirety for the week, if you're someone that has lagging arms, this might not be enough volume for one, but also we need to make consideration for the quality of that volume and that you're doing it on the tail end of a session after a lot of compound movements. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're like under 200 pounds, no offense to the under 200 pound guys, and you have smaller arms, potentially you might also have a small back and small legs and just be a smaller individual as a whole. And so the fast track way to get as big as possible is to train more of these full body days to an upper lower split, to a push pull leg split, as training your major muscle groups is going to be the fast track to getting really, really big. Then as you're big, your arms in turn should be proportionately big. But what you might see along the way is that they're a disproportionate increase to everything else except your arms. Before we get into actually designing a layout to deviate away from push-pull legs, there is some ways within a push-pull leg layout to make it a bit more arm focused. And what I would say here is that the quality of that stimulus matters a lot. So for one, just look at your arm training, make sure you are doing, you're connecting well with these movements and you're picking movements where you actually feel the muscle to some degree getting a good contraction and you're able to take these through a full range of motion as well. And you're not beating up elbows, wrists, etc. Check out our applied hypertrophy course on J3U as we go through how to set up and pick the right exercises for you. Now, this programming piece is what we cover extensively in our new hypertrophy module that's coming out for J3 University. So the programming side is what I really wanted to focus on today. But if you're following a push-pull legs, and you still, John, I still want to get ultimately really big, you could put some emphasis in your arms still. And so what I would say is one option is take your bicep work from your pull day, which is at the very end, and move it to the front of your leg day. Like doing 6 sets of biceps before you train legs is not a huge deal. Many people have done it that way to raise the quality of that stimulus. So you can't always just think about raising more total volume. It also is about the quality of that volume. So that's one way to get some better quality volume if you're doing push-pull legs. As far as the tricep work goes, that one can be a bit trickier because if you do all your isolation tricep work first on push day, likely you're going to have your pec and delt development suffer in turn. So what you could do though is strategically put in a little bit more tricep focus, tricep bias pressing movement. So maybe you're doing a close grip bench press, you have a dip in place, then you also have some chest focused press as well. Then you go on to your tricep isolation work. And I would say just raising volume up in turn in tricep isolation work could also be done on those push days. Now, for when this still isn't enough, because we're going to have basically max out the amount of time that we can allocate total volume for these sessions, and before fatigue really sets in and just the quality of work is just not there. We just need more total quality work now for the week. This is when you see limitations in doing push-pull legs, and you're going to have to deviate away from that, which you could still do some form of push-pull legs, but all we really are talking about here when we're looking at split design is naming days and how you want to organize this volume across the week. It just so happens we name these things push, pull, and legs. I mean, you can call it chest and delt day, back day, quad day, whatever you want to say it. But if we look at total volume allocation for each muscle group, how should we spread it out? So if you have like, oh, I don't need a lot of quad work, but I need a ton of arm work, likely we're going to have a split where we need to have frequency in place for arm training. So just try to think outside the box sometimes on how you're designing your splits. So push-pull legs just gives us something to work off of in a base. But let me get to the point. So you need an arm day, basically. If you want to bring up arms, that's the best way I've seen when I've had guys that have been doing push-pull legs, their arms are lagging. They just need a direct arm day. And there's a few different ways to do this. It's basically going to come down to what is your recovery capacity on your push-pull leg split. How much do you have really to allocate towards training? Then also maybe what other body parts you still need to bring up as well. So a starting point here would be still follow push-pull legs. If you're doing like push-pull off, legs off, you could take one of those off days and just move it to an arm day. So you do push-pull, arms, legs off, repeat. A good first step here is moving that volume from your push and pull days onto the arm day. That way your total volume doesn't change for the week, just the quality raises up. Assess that just for a couple weeks, then bump volume up even more as you can. Now, what I would suggest doing is don't do a pull day and bicep work, then the next day you're doing arm work again. The idea is that you do your pull day, then you have your bicep work after that. Another way to do this is like, okay, 4 days straight of training. I notice the quality of this starts to dwindle once I get to my leg day. Is you do push, pull off, arms, legs off. Training everything every 6 days. Some people don't like the rotating day split. I understand that. You could make set days, easily so. This also works really well if you need something else to focus on, which likely we all have some other body part you need to bring up. So you could follow push, pull off. Then you, depending these last 3 days, we can vary how we would structure them, but it would be arms, legs. Then maybe you're like, hey, I also need to bring up my back. Then we put back in here in an off day. So basically training 2 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off, which gets you set training days. And that way throughout the entire week, that muscle group that you're trying to bring up, you're training it twice. So you'll have your pull day and say your back day. But then you also have that direct arm work day as well. Now, if you're working through this, you're like, man, I'm still recovering. I still can get more volume in. That's when you might consideration, it's just keeping in plenty of that isolation work on your push and pull days. This way you're getting 2 more days of stimulus for direct tricep work, direct bicep work in your arm work total for the week. So you'd have your, let's say we stay on this 5-day training split. You have your push day with direct tricep work after, your pull day, direct bicep work after, off. You have your direct arm day in place, legs, and then whatever secondary body parts you're trying to bring up. Maybe it's chest and delt. It's kind of a pump day, higher reps, more isolation work, off, then repeat. So that's how you can build this out. But work your way up as you need. So first step, increase the quality of your stimulus. Next step from there, then bumping up volume, and wait a few weeks. Don't just do so much at once. That's usually when we run into wrist and tendonitis issues in the elbows. So what I would suggest is like a 20% increase in total set volume for the week. Hold there for like 5 to 6 weeks, then increase again if you're seeing that you are recovering well. If you have weak arms, you might need to deviate a bit away from push-pull legs. Lots of flexibility in split design and in building this training program out for your own personal needs. So I hope you enjoy, grow those arms, and I'll talk to you next time.